Hi guys, my name is Imran and today we're going to talk about the setting API of WordPress. Okay, so WordPress setting API basically provides a way to embed forms and fields into WordPress admin menu pages called the setting pages. So if you go to your WordPress, okay, and this is the admin menu, the sidebar basically. Okay, and this is your section that we're talking about. So it gives us an option to uh, add the forms and fields into this part of the admin menu. Okay, we can either add it into general, writing, reading, and different sections like that. We can add different forms. These are the input fields, these are the forms that are already there. So if we want to add new items into it, we can add new settings options using the setting API of WordPress. Okay, or we can also make an entire new setting page on the admin bar as well, like I've done here. It's this theme options page, and we have added these new input fields um, onto this option page. Okay, so let's create a fresh one, a fresh options page. Okay, but before that, just like to give you a couple more information about the setting API. Okay, it helps us manage the admin pages containing settings, define new setting pages, which I've done here. I've defined a new setting page. You can also manage the existing setting page as well. Okay, and the fields within the section. Okay, so fields is basically this that we're talking about. Okay, and the sections are created using add setting section function. Okay, so the new section is created using the add setting function, which if you go to your WordPress codex, you'll be able to see that this is our setting API, and the different functions which are mentioned over here. So basically the add setting section function, the job of this function is to create a new field. Okay, and sorry, the sections, create a new section basically, and the fields, which is the input fields, are created by the add setting field function, which is this. Yep, that's it. Right, and to display the stuff, um, to display this stuff is not enough. This is not enough. You'll be able to store the form element values in the database and also be able to retrieve them. So obviously these two functions are basically creating the section and creating the fields, uh, the form fields, but we also need to insert these values into database and then retrieve the values to display them. So that's what we're talking about. So the values are being stored using register setting function. Okay, so this register setting function is basically takes the value of the form field. So if you check this form of the setting page, this is the form, and there are different inputs inside this, and there's table inside of which there is input field as well. So all of the value that is that the user entered is going to be stored into the database using the register setting function. Okay, and these values are retrieved using the get option function. Okay, so the setting API basically does use the update option, get option, and delete option to handle these internally. It's kind of a wrapper to those functions. So this is obviously we are storing the data using register setting function. We are retrieving the data using get option function, but obviously it needs to be updated, and if required, deleted as well. So all those things are taken care by your setting API basically. Okay, so let's start a project. So basically what we need to do is we need to create this setting page, which will have a heading, and then the description, and then it'll have the input field, which takes my URL, it takes my ads code, and if I enter all this information, it saves the information into database. Okay, so for that, I've already written the code. Okay, so let's make it bigger. Cool. So what we've done is, let me just increase the font size so you can see it clearly. 1 second. Yep, slightly more bigger. Brilliant. Okay, I think it's more visible now. Okay, right. So the very first function is the add new menu items function. Now this function does not belong to the setting API. The job of this function is to basically create this admin menu page. So this page right here that I've created with the help of this function, which is called add new menu items. Okay, and then inside of which we have the option to create a menu page, and then you can also create the sub menu pages like the other admin menus have. But then in this tutorial we are only talking about creating one page. Okay, so this is the main page that creates the um, admin menu, and then inside of which we have created this page, okay, which is right here using the admin menu pages. Now it takes certain parameters. The very first parameter is the theme options. Okay, so basically this is the text in the browser. Okay, if you see over here, theme option is the name. If I change the name to, let's say, theme, and I refresh the browser, you can see that it's changed. Okay, so let's change it back to normal. Okay, so this first parameter takes care of what is displayed in the browser. Okay, theme options page is basically what is displayed here in the admin menu bar. Okay, and then manage options is basically the required capability of the user to access this menu item. Okay, and then there's theme options, okay, which is a unique identifier to identify this menu item. Okay, so theme options, we check. So theme option is basically is a slug name that we are using in different functions, okay, to link all these functions. All right, so basically theme option is a slug name of a page whose settings section you want to output. Okay, so then you have the theme options page parameter. This is a callback function that outputs the content of the page associated with the menu item. Okay, so basically this is this function right here. Okay, themes options page. The job of this function is to render this HTML content over here. Okay, and do other stuff as well, but the main job is this, to display this content of this page, this option page. Okay, and then it's URL, which is optional, and then 100 position of the menu item in the menu. Okay, so that's the variable parameter. Okay, cool. So just to recap on this function, so the add new menu item function creates the admin menu bar over here, and then the add menu page creates the page. In this we are passing certain parameters. You have theme options, which takes care of what goes in the title. Then you have theme options page, which takes care of what is displayed here in the admin menu bar. Then you have manage options, which is the capability of the user to access this menu item. Then you have theme option, which is the slug, which is going to be used in other functions to link it. And then you have the theme options page, which is the callback function, which displays the content of this page. Okay, cool. Now in this function, if you come in, this function is basically got the div, then you have the another div inside that, then you have the heading, and then you have the form. Okay, so and we've got these three functions defined here. So this function basically prints the input fields at the start. So if you go and check, so first I'll give you a gist of it, then I'll go in detail. So this form is basically what is created right here. Okay, as you can see, options.php, options.php. Okay, now it has got different input fields, as you can see, and then there is also a table, and table also has different input fields, as you can see. So the first part, not the input fields inside the table, the first part of the input fields come by setting fields, this function. Okay, and the next part, which is the table, which is this table, and the header options, okay, that comes with do setting sections. Okay, and then there's a submit button function, which basically creates this p tag with the submit input. Okay, I'm going to go into detail of these functions now, as you've got the gist of it. So prints the input fields with names, nonce, action, and options page. So if you check, this section right here is what I'm talking about. The inputs, these are the inputs, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, if you check, um, so there is, one second. Yeah, right. So you can see the nonce, action, and options page. So the names are options page, action, and WP nonce. Okay, so the job of this function is to basically print those things. Okay, and the header section is the setting group name, which should match the group name used in register settings. Okay, so when we're calling this function, this is basically the group name, which should be same when we're calling this function register settings. Okay, to register our settings, and that's what we're talking about. Okay, and then the add settings section callback is displayed here. Okay, so this function, whatever this function is doing, is doing basically the same thing. It's going ahead and creating all those inputs. Okay, so we're calling this function, which in turn is calling this function, which is add settings section. Okay, cool. Now the next one is the do settings sections. Okay, so this function basically prints out the h2, which is the header option. So it's h2, not h1. And the table with all the setting sections inside of the form. So you have this table right here. It's got all of the inputs and everything. So the job of this function, which is do setting section, is to print out that table and the h2 tag, which says header options right here. Okay, I'll go into the detail of it. Okay, so theme options is basically a slug name, like you had a group name for setting fields, which is header section. Similarly, you have a slug name for the page whose setting sections you want to output, and the same slug is going to be used if you check in the add setting section, as well as in the add setting field function, etc. Cool. So basically this is a slug just like this. Okay, that was a group name. This is slug for do setting, right, and all the callbacks. So this basically do setting section function calls our add setting field function. Okay, right. So just to recap, setting fields, job of that is to display this part of the input inside the form, the first part of the input, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and it calls the add setting section function, okay, which basically adds the input. Okay, and then do setting section is calling the add setting field functions, okay, which is basically displaying our table which contains the input elements, all these inputs. Okay, and the submit button, you already know, it goes ahead and submits the form. It renders the input element to submit the form. So closing the form now. Okay, and then we're using add action basically to call our add new menu item function. Okay, so this function right here. Okay, just a little bit of recap. So add action function basically has got a hook admin menu. When the script reaches admin menu, it's going to call the add new menu item function. Add new menu item function, when it's called, it's going to call the add menu page to create the page right here, this page, and it's going to call the theme option page function. Theme option page function is going to, display all the contents here, right here. And to display that, we are creating form within the div tag settings field, which in turn calls the add settings section and displays the input, this section right here. And then you have the do settings section function, which calls the add setting field functions, which in turn displays the table right here, table content. Okay. and then you have the submit button. Okay, cool. So if you've understood till right here, you've understood this part. Now we'll go further. Okay, so display option function. Okay, now this is a little separate section. It is a part of it, but it's a little separate section. So to display options, we have used an add action. Okay, so when you're using add action, it's going to call this hook. So whenever the script reaches this hook admin init, it's going to call the display option function, and this display option function is right here. Okay, I'll give you some basic idea about these functions. So add setting section, basically the job of it is to display the input section right here. Okay, and I've already explained that this function setting fields function calls the add setting sections. Okay, and similarly you have the add setting fields, both of them. So this add setting field, basically if you go inside the table, the first part, the header logo, comes from add setting field, the first function, and the second function, advertising code. This is the second line of input. Advertising code comes from here. Okay, so basically this function is called by this do setting sections, and the job of it is to display the table, this table, and the two input fields. Cool. Now next is the register setting. So register setting basically registers the header section. Okay, so basically the job of it is to register this setting fields. Okay, and it's also using these header logos and all that. So this was the basic idea. Now we'll go into detail. So add setting section function, the job of which we have discussed is to display this input 1 2 3 4 5 inputs right here inside the form element. The first part is the header section. So header section is the value of the hidden input field in the name option page. So if you check value header section, so this part is meant by this, and then it's header options. So it's the heading that will be displayed on the setting page. So if you check header options, right, header options, so this heading that is displayed comes from here. And then there's display header options content. This is a callback function, and we have defined this here right within this function. So the job of it is to echo the description. So it says the header of the theme, and the description is right here. Okay, so the description bit, header of the themes, comes from here, from this function. This function is all it's doing is just echoing this description content. Okay, and then there's theme options, which is nothing but the slug name of the page. So theme option is the same slug that we've used here. Okay, a moment. All right, so you got that. Now next function is add setting field. Okay, so as I explained earlier, the job of this function is to render this table, which contains two elements. One is input, the first one, the header logo, and the second input is advertising code. So the two functions right here, one is displaying the first input, and the second is displaying the second input, advertising code. Okay, and so the first part, basically header logo, is the ID attribute of the input field. So if you go and check, ID is equal to header logo. and that's what is coming from here. Okay, and then it says the logo URL. So logo URL is this, and if you check this part, logo URL is coming from here. Then it says display logo format element, which is again a callback function. The job of this function is to display an input field which has the link and everything that user is inputting. Okay, so whatever user inputs over here, this input field right here that you see, it's coming from this function, which we are calling here. Okay, then there's the theme options, is basically the slug name, which is used here and used here as well in the do settings sections, just to link everything up. Okay. Then there is header section. The headers, so header section is basically the group name again, which is to link this function right here. Okay, so these two are to link each other. Cool. Then the second input field, which is right here, advertising. The name of this is advertising code, and that's where it's coming here from here. And then it's ads code, which is right here, and ads code is the name that's displayed here. Okay, so that's where what is coming from here. And then there's a callback function, display ads form element, which is the, let's see, one moment. Alright, so this function basically display ads from element form element is this function again, which is no, not this one, sorry, this one right here. Okay, so it's displaying the advertisement code. This input field is being displayed by this function, and it takes the link of whatever the, not the link, but the input value, whatever the user enters over here. It's 1 2 3 in this case. Okay, cool. So next, theme options. Again, this is a slug name. Header section, again similarly, it's the group name, so to link these two functions, do setting section and setting fields. Okay, then the last thing, which is last but not the least, is register setting, which is basically registering these functions. Header section is the group name, which is used here, here, here. Okay, and then the header logo, which is this part right here. So header section is a group name, same as defined add setting field and setting field functions. Header logo and advertising code are the ID attributes of the input field with the name header logo and advertising logo. So basically the header logo and the advertising code are the ID attributes, which I've already explained to you. This one and this one, header logo and advertising code. Okay, so basically that's pretty much it, and that's what is giving us the this page. Okay, and if I go ahead and make changes, 4 5 6, it is getting saved and everything. Okay, so that's how we create the options page in the admin menu bar using our setting API. I'm just going to give you a quick summary, a quick recap of what we have discussed. So basically, we've got this function, add new menu item. The job of this function is to display the admin menu bar, which is our custom one, theme options page. It has this function, add menu page. The job of this function is to display the content of the menu page, which in turn calls the theme options page function. Theme options page function creates a form which has setting field, do setting, and submit button. Setting field calls add setting section, which is registered by register setting. Okay, and these guys help you to display the input fields in the form, the beginning first 5 input fields, and then you have do setting sections, which which in turn calls the add setting field functions, which is again registered by the register setting, and job of this is to display the form, sorry, the table with the 2 input elements is coming from here and here, and these are the ones which are calling the other 2 functions, which is this one and this one, to display these 2 input fields. Okay, and obviously the ad settings section also has the callback function, which displays the description of the page. Okay, and then this, all of this, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8, all of this entire thing is defined in display option functions, which is you know which is called by the add action hook, and the add new menu item is called by the add action hook as well over here. So there are two add action that we are doing, right? Cool. So I hope that clears everything, and if you have any questions, you can leave the comments. Thank you very much for watching, guys. Take care. Bye bye.